And this makes me talk about what happens after the 8th track. I mean, as you can see, my grid ends here, so that the last track I can control is this one with the surface controller. But as you can see, I have some other tracks going on here with instruments inside of them. So what is there? Why I have them? And how I control them? First of all, this one on the right far and this one are audio tracks. The first one is the microphone track, which is on monitoring. You can click on it to I'm gonna show you. Okay, if you click on a track, you activate or deactivate it from the audio. I'm gonna show you. If I keep talking now, click on it, you're not gonna hear anything. Now it's light up, so it's working, it's sending audio, and it's put on in monitoring, which means that it's always listening to audio regardless the fact that it's armed or not. This track is a microphone track which I keep always open because, first of all, I don't use any loops on it. Second, it is the one I use for singing and for talking. I'm a shitty singer, so I usually use the microphone for talking. And this way, the track I would use for singing, if I were a singer, is out of the 8/8 grid, which means that I don't need to access it in any way. I don't need to arm it. If I were a live looper which needs to sing and it doesn't need to send the singing into loops, I will put this track out of the grid and on monitoring. This way I just have to get near the microphone and sing every time I want to do that. Okay? If you need to create loops with your voice, I would move this one into the 8/8 grid and put it on auto monitoring so that it starts listening to the microphone only if you arm the track. Otherwise, you put it outside. Another example, if you are a rapper, if you can freestyle, you build a new loop, you leave this microphone open so that anytime you want to rap, you want to add something on the microphone is already open. Remember, the microphone is always open if you put it on monitoring, so it listens to everything you say and any sound you do. Just remember that. The last track here is a pre-master, which is is a pre-master, which is an audio track collecting audio coming from some of these tracks. I'm gonna explain how my audio chain works later on, but for now, just ignore this track. This track doesn't exist for the practice. These tracks, however, are instruments. First of all, I have my saxophone, my virtual saxophone, I mean. And this is my alternate lead. As I showed you, I have a lead track on track number 4, which are synths, and then I have a separate track for my saxophone. This is because I find easier to press a button to arm the track instead of moving a knob. Also, I don't usually record loops on this track, so it is okay for me to put it outside the 8/8 grid. By the way, if you notice, by clicking on keys, these tracks are mapped to number 1 to 8, which means that if I press number 1, I activate the saxophone. If I press any other keys, I activate the other tracks. You can do this with all the tracks outside the 8/8 grid in order to access them. Remember, do not map number 0, because number 0 is the number used to activate or deactivate a track completely, which means that it excluded from the audio chain and no sounds are coming out of it. I'm gonna show you. There are techniques that take advantage of this thing. I'm gonna explain them later on. Track numbers 1 to 9 can be mapped, and in this case I mapped them to all the tracks outside the 8/8 grid. If you don't have a surface control at the start, you may decide to use number 1 to 9 to map your starting instruments inside the 8/8 grid. Then another instrument I have here is plugs. Plugs are percussive sounds, synth sounds, which I use to embellish, to add something out of songs I have already built. For example, so I usually use plugs when I need to add a certain flavor, percussive flavor to the song. But as they are outside the grid, this means that I have to be really careful where I place the clip when I'm recording. By the way, Ableton is set up so that if you press the session record button, it's gonna create a new clip on the row highlighted. And Ableton changes the highlighted row depending on the last command you have issued. For example, if I start the first row, as you can see, the first row is highlighted. So if I record, if I press the session record button, it's gonna record there. But if I decided to record a second bass line, now the second row is highlighted. So if I go back to plugs and I decide to record them, they're gonna be recorded on the second row. So you have to be really careful when operating outside the grid, because you don't have direct access to this clip except with your mouse. So really be really careful when you record, where you record them, and remember where they are, because you can always look at the screen and remember. For example, going back into the use of plugs, I use them to create percussive sounds on top of everything, but I can use them also to create a sort of breakdown, a pause in the song. I'm gonna show you. Okay, so the same thing happens with another channel I have here, which is Labs. Okay, Labs is a name of a series of synths, free synths by Spitfire Audio. And one of them is this beautiful pluck guitar, a lap steel guitar, which sounds like this. This is wonderful, and I use this exactly for that. Okay. Now that I've created this, I can do whatever I want with the rest of the sounds. I have just to remember that this one is on track 1, so if I launch all the clips on track 1, they're gonna be there. If I move it to another row and I want to launch it separately, I have to access it with the mouse. This is why working outside the 8/8 grid is a risk. You have to remember where you place things, and you have to reliably access them in a way or another. For example, now I have all the grid cluttered of things I don't use, so I may decide to just move them around and start again. Just change sound. Okay, so as you can see, you can go beyond the 8th track. You can place whatever you want on the other tracks, but you have to remember how to access them and where they are placed inside the grid. Just a quick view of the other things I have here. Track 11, which is accessible with number 3 of my keyboard. It's strings. Which is, if you think about that, just another kind of pad. I could place this one under the pads, but in that case, it wouldn't be accessible, just like having it on a separate tracks. I'm gonna explain this when I talk about instrument racks later on in the course. Then I have channel 12, which are another kind of keys. This is a strange choice because I started only recently using this kind of sound, and I still have to find a way to plug it into the other instrument tracks without going on the other needs. I mean, without conflicting with them, because sometimes I need them outside the arrangement, sometimes I need them inside the arrangement. I'm still studying them, so for now I just placed them outside the grid. And then man, this one. This one is an auto-chained synth with a free plugin which is called Mother Ducker. You can find it on Google if you Google it. And the point is this one. Again, I may need it, I may not need it. I usually don't need to move it along the grid, so I just stick it outside the grid. I record the clip on row 1, and I know that every time I launch scene 1, the chained synth is there. Channel 15, this is an arpeggiator. Also this one, usually I record only a clip of this sound during the song. I don't move it, or I don't need to access outside row 1. Okay, And last one? Oh man, this is my wild card. On channel 16, I have a collection of samples, and this is a strange one. These samples are just voices from several things I have around. For example, samples of songs, a sample of people talking, and this is the track I use to just joke around on a song when everything else fails. I mean, if you have just sung, if you have rapped on the song, and now you need something else. Don't you know that I do the bird, do the grapevine, for example. Something like that. And also this channel, I usually don't need to record clips on them, so it's okay for me to have it outside the grid and to put it on a number of the keyboard so that I know it's always there. That's it, guys. So now you know how to use the grid, what kind of instruments plays inside the grid, how to access them, and how to access also the instruments that are outside the grid, and why you should put them there instead of inside the grid. I think we can move to the next lessons.